Welcome back. My name is Robert Thomas. You've just been watching an ecosystem gallery series of videos. Thank you to all of the ecosystems who sent their videos in. You've been watching Tampere in Finland, Ruhr in Germany, Houston in the US, Tsukuba in Japan, Montreal in Canada, Thailand, and Hsinchu in Taiwan. We're now going to start this second panel session. I'm joined by Sebastien Guinard, who is going to chair the panel, and here in Grenoble by Sylvie Blanco and Patrick Lévy. I'll hand over to you, Sebastien, to kick off our panel.
Thanks, Robert. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to lead this session number 2, dealing with winning technologies in time of COVID. We will have a brief summary of all the discussion we have here in Giant and with our friends of ecosystem all over the world. We have a plan for this session, and we would like to start with a brief video coming from Stefan Sieber. Stefan Sieber, who is the CEO of CEA Tech. So the subsidiary, the division of the CEA, which is really dedicated to transfer technology from labs to industrial firms. So please, if you can launch the video, it will be great.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, for the second panel session, I was asked to provide an introduction about winning innovations. Perhaps the first question is what a winning innovation means to me at the head of CEA Tech. Of course, there are many types of innovation, but here at CEA, with our breadth of scientific expertise and investment in infrastructure, we normally mean that we are trying to develop a winning technology. Easier said than done, of course. More specifically, by winning, we really mean technologies that can provide some kind of advantage and benefit over the state of the art for our industrial partners, for the new startups that we try to create, and of course, for the society. There are many great research organizations across the world, many of them viewing this HLF Connect briefing today. And so our real challenge is to develop technological approaches that are differentiated, competitive, and ultimately valuable. If I would to cite a couple of examples here in Grenoble, I would mention the work of Giant ecosystem partners on a truly revolutionary approach to quantum computing using CMOS processing. I would also mention CEA's state-of-the-art development of high-performance electrolysis to enable tomorrow's hydrogen economy. But perhaps what really makes these technologies truly winning, and it often takes time, is when we are able to transfer them from research to our industrial partners, who can turn these technologies into products and services for the benefit of society. Like other research organizations, CEA has been both impacted by the crisis and also mobilized to create new innovations to respond to the pandemic. What are some of these innovations? How might our methods of working need to change, including within our different ecosystems? Let's now listen to the views of our panelists.
Thank you so much, Stefan. We prepare some slides in order to ease the discussion and to have a short support to share with you. So this is not the right slides, but it doesn't matter. I could do it without them. First of all, I could start by...
Could we have the slides for panel 2, please?
Let's wait a few seconds. It will be more comfortable.
Great.
Thank you very much. So everything that will be introduced and presented to you right now is really a collective thinking. So I want to start by thanking very much our colleagues and friends, colleagues from Giant, our friends from Lund, Tsukuba, Longueuil Montreal, and from Technion. They will be introduced later on in the discussion. So in our group, we have, in fact, some few questions we try to answer to. First question is about innovation. What are the innovations we are working on in order to face to the COVID crisis in our ecosystem? So this is the starting point of our thinking. Then we try to think about the innovations that emerge, and we try to think if those innovations are only dedicated for short-term impact or also for longer term. And finally, we try to do an effort in order to think about our ecosystem. Are there some lessons that we can learn from this crisis and that can make our ecosystem greater in the future? So this is all the questions we work on together. And at the very beginning of the discussions we were during maybe 6 or 7 different meetings, we first say and recognize the fact that necessity is the mother of invention. History has always shown us that at every crisis, some opportunities emerge. And this is a starting point for us. We remember that during the Great Depression, it was the same times for Walt Disney, the same times when Walt Disney has had his first hits, his first success. In the dot-com crisis in the 20th century, we remember that Apple rebirth with the iPod. And last, during the financial crisis, it's also it is also the time where the fintech ecosystem start to grow up. To come back to winning technologies in the time of COVID, we say, yes, there are some winning technologies, but they are not all the same. Probably there are 2 different kinds of winning technologies: core ones and peripheral ones. Core ones are dedicated to health issues. It is everything about vaccines, tests, tracing applications, and so on. Peripheral winning technologies are all the technologies that make possible to continue the economic and the social life. It is everything about digitalization, logistics, and so on. Lots of those things have been detailed this morning. So yes, there have been technologies, winning technologies in the time of COVID, but they are different. Of course, if there are some winning technologies, there are some winners. Here are some examples. For instance, we take the market capitalization of some firms. Biomateriaux, the first one, with a great increase of the market cap, something about 50%. We also look at companies that has a great success with Zoom. And we saw that the market capitalization has a huge increase, more than 600%. And in other ways, there are some losers. There are some losers, for instance, with United Airlines, a very big company with a market capitalization that crashed. And also, for instance, for Accor, a major hospitality company, with something like minus 30% in its market cap. So these were signals that really strike us. But we ask ourselves the questions: are the scorched lands of today the fertile grounds of tomorrow? For instance, if we look at the automotive market, we already know that sales will be very difficult for this year. The market could be down of about minus 20 or minus 30%. But in the same time, we have all see that new mobility emerge, and we also see that electric vehicles sales really increased strongly for the very first time, and not only Tesla. Another point regarding winning innovation is that we can't look at winning innovation without looking at the ecosystems that make those innovations possible. It is about us. And we notice that there are probably 4 pillars that help us to deploy and develop this kind of innovations. First of all, our ability to work in team. The fact that we developed innovation based on very strong scientific bases. Our deep anchorage in local territories. And our ability to manage very ambitious and complex projects. If you want to develop a test, if you want to develop a vaccine, in few weeks, you have to have very strong skills for this. So we are happy to see that those pillars that we have for a long time with us were really useful. But we have questions regarding this. Is it sufficient? Maybe not. Will it be sufficient in the future? Probably not. We think that we could enrich our ecosystems with other pillars that could be pillars related to experimentation. Could we make experimentation a native component of our project rather than an exotic project management system, for instance? Could we think about more inclusive innovation? We discussed it a lot this morning, and we think that we have lots of margin of improvement by taking into consideration these kind of things. So there are winning innovation. We are, in a way, winning ecosystems, but we have to work to improve ourselves. And then I would like to present you, in the name of our working team, a little story. A story about what could our ecosystems look like in 10 years. So I will tell you the story of Mary. Mary is a researcher. She belongs to the living lab of one of the world's leading innovation ecosystem. This ecosystem orchestrating the collaboration between 50,000 researchers and students, both in public and private labs. The other 2 labs are the moving labs and the feeding labs. What Mary do is that Mary is working at morphing private space to working space. And to do this, she is working on 2 different skills, material skills and digital technologies. The project management teams include real residents of the local district. And this local district hosts her laboratory. Our next meeting will start in something like 10 minutes, and it will take place in a prototype building, a big building, a 4-story building that is just an experimental building. It is used to test the innovation that Mary develops with all of her colleagues. So this is maybe a dream. Maybe it will be not the reality, but we see by studying innovation in a time of COVID that this kind of future might be possible in the near term. So that's it for our synthesis, and I'm very pleased now maybe to give Robert the opportunity to lead the roundtable.
Thank you, Sebastien. If we could just move on to the next slide, please. So Sebastien mentioned at the beginning, this panel, this working group was very much a group effort. We're very pleased to be joined today by a number of ecosystems that were working together. We have Benoit Balmana, who is CEO of IVEO in Montreal, and Benoit will be joined by two colleagues, Mickael Brad, who's working on a particular project called the Jalon MTL, and Olivier Demers-Dubé, who will present to us some work by an organization known as Agtech. Very pleased to welcome here in Grenoble Sylvie Blanco, who is Executive Director for Innovation at the Grenoble Ecole de Management. We have Toshihiko Kanayama, Special Emeritus Advisor at AIST. So Toshi is with us. I saw him a minute ago. Toshi is I guess we could say drew the short straw on our panel. Toshi was always up late whenever we had our discussions. We have Patrick Lévy, IDEX Coordinator, University of Grenoble Alpes. Welcome to Patrick, former president of the university. Mia Rolf, you saw CEO of Ideon. You saw Mia in our last panel. So several of our ecosystems were actually part of multiple panels. So they really did like to work in panels together. So that was great. And as Gabrielle mentioned, Mia and Mia's team at Ideon was the host for the HLF high-level forum last year in Lund. And finally, we have Koby Rubenstein, mathematician, executive vice president for research at Technion. So we're delighted to have Koby again. I saw Koby in the video a moment ago. So as with the last panel, we've invited our panelists to make a short 5-minute presentation of their ecosystem. Maybe those who've already presented their ecosystem can go kind of fairly fast on that, or leave that slide out. We'll leave it to you. And then we ask them to present some of the innovations that they developed, as Sebastien said, either things that they developed very much in direct response to the COVID, or things that were perhaps more peripheral. Perhaps there were knock-on effects that the COVID has created. And so those innovations address some of those challenges. So I'd like to welcome, first of all, Mia Rolf from Ideon in Lund in Sweden. Mia, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
So welcome back, Mia. So I'll give you the floor for your 5-minute presentation about the ecosystem and in particular about some of the innovations that you've been working on.
Right. So for those of you who were with us this morning, I will go fairly quickly through this. So Sweden has been in a voluntary lockdown. This has caused us to continue working digitally with business as usual as much as possible. And one of the innovations that happened was that we had to quickly move together in a local support organization to help supporting the growth of the companies. You could go to the next slide, because I think the next slide is more interesting to the people here. Thank you. So here are some of the innovations made in our ecosystem that I would like to mention. You have one of the innovations called SafeSure. It's a global warning system. It's combining AI analysis of catastrophe news all over the world and the combination of geofencing. So they could actually warn people in different areas all over the world if they can see a catastrophe like an earthquake or a virus outbreak. And they were actually able to warn a lot of the IKEA employees in Asia early on this year and to move them out of dangerous areas. So and they have been taking off this year, of course, and also produced a platform for open for business, where you can go to this website, and if you want to make a visit to any of the countries in the world, you could see the regulations needed to follow in the COVID pandemic situation. So, and another innovation is Enzymatica. It's a mouth spray that were already on the market, an OTC product, but they discovered that it kills 85% of the virus COVID-19 in labs, and now they are testing it on live. And another innovation is the red gleed discovery. They quickly moved together with a Norwegian partner to form a vaccine. I don't know how far they've come, but they're approaching readiness. Diagonal Pharma, they actually developed a virus diagnostic platform, and they used COVID-19 as their pilot target virus for this. And Xintelia got a lot of money, I think 100,000 euros from the Swedish Innovation Agency for a preclinical study to evaluate if they could use stem cells for treatment of the COVID-19 patients. So a lot of technical solutions directly targeting the COVID-19 pandemic, of course. But in general, we could see that we also moved quickly into rearranging the production of, I would say, light tech solutions like hand sanitations and production of masks or visir. I don't know what the English word for that, but face covers. And of course, anything that has to do with digitalization of businesses, energy consumption control software, simulation software, or health in any way just took off. So it was a super visible effect. And then you can move to the last slide. The challenges that we had, or we saw the trend of big investments being delayed. People are using less public transport due to obvious reasons, but that turned it into a problem with traffic. So more cars went to work, and when we could have saved the climate, we really didn't this time. Of course, we stopped flying. That we managed even in Sweden to do. And we had some other issues, but I think that what we learned was also that the super focus of our innovation ecosystem went to caring, safety, and more agile acting to solve all the issues that we stood in front of. I think I'll stay there.
Thank you, Mia. I know we're going to come back to a number of those innovations later, so thank you very much. And if we could move now to Toshihiko Kanayama. Toshi, welcome. Toshi, are you with us? We have Koby. Do we have Toshi? Hi, Koby. So maybe let's move on, perhaps to the next presentation while we get Toshi with us. So Montreal, Benoit, do we have you and your colleagues? I can see a number of people.
Yes, here we are, Robert. Everyone there.
Hi, Benoit. Hi, Mickael. Hi, Olivier. So, Benoit, colleagues, the floor is yours to tell us about, I know, two very interesting developments, innovations in the Montreal area.
Thank you, Robert. Hello, everyone. And we are very pleased to quickly introduce our Montreal-based ecosystem and to tell you about two winning technologies that we have developed in regard of the COVID situation. So maybe you remember, and we saw a quick video a few minutes ago about our Montreal ecosystem, but we are mainly focused on mobility ecosystem. And our approach is ready to solve cities issue and to have a lot of experimentation and to look for the social acceptance of the innovation. So the context with the COVID we can see on the screen, but I think that many countries face the same issues about limitation in travel and having a short distance possibility for the traveling. Also, maybe raising a local spirit for buying goods. So we've seen the e-commerce boom also appears, and Mickael will talk about the issues that was raised by the e-commerce boom. And also, maybe you remember in Montreal we have a winter and we have a weather condition quite specific. And when we look to a local buying for agri-food, for instance, we really need to reinvent a way to make agriculture. So that's why we have chosen two winning technologies to present. One about zero emission delivery for goods, and also technology around urban agriculture. So I will let my two colleagues present those two projects, and Mickael, I let you the floor to talk about the zero emission delivery. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Benoit. Hi, everyone. So just a few words. Jalon is a non-profit organization working for the city of Montreal. And what happened during the 2 months of April and May was the closure of convenience stores. And so you can, next, please, Benoit. So the idea was in Montreal that non-essential shops had to close during 2 months, but they were still able to sell online or by phone. And at the same moment, the classical carriers like Post Canada were really saturated with cases of COVID in their sorting centers. The prices were not adapted and the delay were very long. So as you see in the scheme, for convenience stores, if they wanted to sell to a customer, a local customer living less than 5 kilometers next to the shop, the trucks were really used to pick up at night a parcel, to bring it 20 kilometers further in a sorting center, and a couple of days after going back the highway 20 kilometers to drop the parcel. So we were facing this, and we wanted to simplify the logistic chain and to help the convenience stores to deliver directly from the shops to the homes, to reduce the footprint, but also to increase the efficiency. So during 2 weeks, we set this kind of a pilot project, but a pilot project directly in production. And 2 months later, shops reopened their doors, so we were able to make a status. And based on 7,000 deliveries, we kind of reached a level of 5 to 7 pickups and deliveries per hour. So for local deliveries with zero emissions, zero trucks, and no Uber modes. And this led us to a performance of $7 to $9 a parcel, which is quite competitive for a same-day delivery. So if you can go next. The assumption of this project was that we use cargo bikes delivery, and the first learning was that, yes, it's efficient in dense areas. It's not a great surprise for anyone living in dense cities. We are seeing more and more cargo bikes. The second assumption was to say that we can make point-to-point direct delivery and that this can be efficient. Learnings, it can be efficient, but it's really hard to optimize because you have to optimize live pickups and deliveries and the load of the bike. So we may think that mini hubs or local warehouses may be useful. Third idea was to consolidate the demand and to try to regroup all the demand of the shops from a local area. And this is clearly the key. in logistics, you have to create density. And the fourth point is the same on the other side. If you get the density, it's not to be cut between several actors. So you always want to have integration between actors so that they can optimize who has to pick up and who has to deliver in a place. And then the fifth point, we tried a kind of risk-sharing value model, and this is not relevant in the long term, but it's very interesting to see that logistics is always a question of density. And sixth point, which I will come back quite after, is that we really want to get the guarantee of volumes, and I think I have to make it short now, Benoit. For a last point, the idea of this project was really to give to convenience store the advantages of big players, which is really feasible with kind of integration and densification. Thank you very much, Benoit.
Thanks, Mike. Now, please, Olivier, if you can introduce your project.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Olivier. I'm Senior Advisor for Zone Agtech. Zone Agtech is a world-class innovation zone for the growth of agtechs and bio-based product companies in Quebec, Canada. So next slide. So the agtech sector really has a double challenge. It needs to remain competitive like any other sector, competitive in between companies, competitive in between countries, and answer the citizens' demands in terms of quality of product. But it's also the first sector that is tackled by every and any challenges from climate change or environmental degradation. So did the pandemic really teach us something in that sector? Well, not really, in the sense that our supply chain, food supply chain, was very little impacted. So if anything, it showed the rigidity, the strength of our agri-food supply chain. But what it did is it created an acute awareness of where is this fragile. And it also gave the population and the government the sensitivity and the acuteness to look and to listen to where these fragilities are. And what we realize is that as an industry, we know very well where our fragilities are, but the innovations weren't necessarily there. Thank you for the slide. So if we know where our fragilities are in terms of innovation and the solutions aren't there, well, we have an issue. And the thing we want to do, the thing we're doing at Zone Agtech is making that knowledge count. And how we're doing that? We're doing that by bridging the gaps that exist currently. So what are those gaps? First and foremost, it's listening to, you can say on the last slide. It's listening to the farmers. So the farmers have been telling us for decades now where the issues are in terms of climate change, in terms of dependency to workforce, in terms of how can we increase our productivity. And the truth is that innovation has up to now not listened to them in a sufficient manner for innovation to be impactful, pertinent. The second gap is clean tech innovation cycle. They're very long cycles. It's 10 to 15 years in between developing and deploying a new technology. And the third thing is in the ag sector, there's a conservative approach to innovation. Why? Because new technology in ag tech are coming from new sectors. They're coming from AI. They're coming from automation and robots. And those are things that farmers are not traditionally used to interact with. So all these three things we need to bridge. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we did is that we implemented a world-class innovation zone in the heart of a farmland, which is near to more than 2,000 farmers, to make sure that the first users are there and they're ready to implement technology, and we bridge that gap in between innovators and farmers. So we've federated over 15 world-class research centers, more than 3,000 scientists, and also farmers, industry leaders. And we presently have an ag tech community of over 100 businesses that are interacting in that very site, whilst developing also, business incubator and business accelerators with laboratories, also to develop the innovations. And finally, every and any tool for financing that innovation, both on the innovators part and also on the farmers part, to acquire that technology. And last but not least, we're doing this in partnership with international partners. We've already started working with United States, France, Morocco, and Brazil. And we're very much looking forward to creating more partnerships so that innovators can come in Zone Agtech and develop these new technologies with us.
Thank you, Olivier.
Thanks.
So maybe I think I see Toshi with us.
Okay, I can now join you.
Nice to see you. So thanks. So Toshi, the floor is yours. And if you could keep to about 5 minutes, that would be great.
Okay, thank you very much. And so I'm now here to represent Tsukuba City. So let me start with a very brief introduction to our city, which you have already heard in the previous panel. And Tsukuba is located 50 kilometers south and northeast apart from Tokyo, and which is the city dedicated to the science and technological research. And so the natural consequence of us to meet the requirement after the COVID-19 is to gather our ability to meet the requirement. So next slide, please. Oh, yes. So the first issue is how to collect our knowledge and expertise to meet the requirement for the medical diagnostics and inspections. Here now we are raising the two examples. The other one is that very convenient and cheap testing system for antibody testing, such as ELISA, and which is composed of some paper testing system, and analysis is made by the smartphone. And the lower example is that very rapid PCR diagnostic systems, and which is depends on our original ability using the microfluidics to shorten the required time for the PCR to less than 15 minutes. And those are two examples which we have already had within our laboratory, but we accelerated the development and also deployment of these technology to the real society. The next slide, please. And certainly, the very important issue for us is to how to deploy the ICT to the people who are not familiar with the ICT previously. And left-hand side is one example, and which is utilizing the smartphone system to manage the school children and for the preparation of the medical systems, which has already been introduced by the Dr. Mori in the previous panels. And but what is important for us is that not simply utilizing the ICT, but COVID situation revealed the problems which has already existing behind our society. And the one particular example for us is that the aging problem. And you know, Japan is now suffering severely from the aging problems, and this problem is now becoming more severe. And but this problem has recently uncovered by the recent COVID situations. I mean that elderly people cannot go out, and also we need some lacking in the workforce to pay attention to the care of the elderly people. So Tsukuba City is now preparing to provide the ICT system to the elderly people who are not familiar with the ICT. At the same time, and we should pay attention to the ICT cannot intervene in the private life. And after the collection of sufficient data, we must handle and analyze those data and to make decisions for our next actions. And that kind of situation certainly rely on the AI. And accordingly, and we opened our particular AI systems to everyone who would like to utilize our top-class AI cloud system for the purpose of treatment for the COVID situations. And also we organized that collaboration system utilizing the AI based on our knowledge for the many various purposes of COVID. Next slide, please. But I should emphasize that the ICT is not the final goal. We must meet the real requirement for our society. One is that psychological resilience. And I should say that the number of death toll coming from the COVID in Japan is just exceeded 2,000, fortunately or unfortunately. But I'm afraid to say that the number of suicide victims is much more larger than that number. And in the country, the suicide cases is now rapidly increasing, particularly for the women, owing to the situation coming from the COVID. So the University of Tsukuba started some survey according to the international collaborations, and what is the factors and the results of COVID for the psychological situations. And this is one example, and we must meet the real and the genuine societal requirement to develop our real technologies. And I think that this is the very important driving force, the innovation for the future. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you very much, Toshi. Very interesting there, listening to some of the negative impacts, but not necessarily directly related to the, or at least not the, not deaths related to pandemic, but the knock-on impacts, health impacts on many older people in particular. So, Koby Rubenstein, very warm welcome. Technion, please give us your presentation. Koby?
Okay, thank you. First of all, we are a university, so we are first and foremost dedicated to teaching the students, to educate engineers and scientists and physicians, and to do research, basic research. But we also greatly emphasize the innovation in new technologies. So the inventions are by faculty members, and either we found spin-off companies, or we licensed them to other more established companies. We also a holding company. We have about 80 active spin-off companies. Some of our companies are now traded at NASDAQ, the total value over $15 billion. And some of our inventions were sold to large companies such as Medtronic, Intel, Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, and more. And we have our own funding arms, we have investment arms. And now talking a little bit about COVID-19. Since March, about 50 of our labs shifted to do COVID-19 related research. And some of the discoveries are already on the market. You can buy them on the web or some stores. Next slide, please. I present here two pictures of two specific technologies that are already active. On the left, you see home-developed technology for monitoring the COVID-19 through the sewage system. We installed this device at several manholes. These are done at the technical dormitories right now. And we can monitor outbreaks at the dorms. We have thousands of students living in the dorms. So this is the crucial step to protect them. This system can identify one sick person out of 500 residents. It's a highly effective system to monitor outbreaks. On the right picture is our home-developed technology for diagnosis of COVID-19, built by one of our young female professors in the medical school. This provides a very fast, very efficient testing method. So basically, the idea was to shift the technology as fast as we can to the COVID-19 related research. I'm showing you only two examples. As I said before, we have several more products already on the market it came out of these 50 laboratories. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Koby. And now to end with, I'd like to pass the presentation now to two members from the giant ecosystem. So Sylvie Blanco at Grenoble Ecole de Management and Patrick Lévy from Université Grenoble to hear a little bit about some of the work that's been going on in the giant ecosystem.
Thank you very much. First of all, I don't know really if I have to present deeply in depth the giant ecosystem because it has already been presented. I just want to mention that, of course, it is very much rooted on science and technology, and that's the key point, I guess. So we can go to the second slide, maybe. Well, the first thing we wanted to illustrate our innovation was actually boosted during the COVID crisis and still. And of course, health research has been very much challenged. To be very short, we could say that it has been quite effective in translating, in a sense, and putting basic research directed towards the COVID. It is very obvious that you can see that, for instance, in the vaccine or in the diagnosis, that it has been already shown. One issue was actually a question of emergency and question of what we call intensive care units. And one of the problems in intensive care units is actually respirator, because you need to ventilate the patients. And you probably know that it having even been suggested that you could use one respirator for 2 patients, which of course we try to avoid. And of course the technology in our ecosystem provided a nice response, which is illustrated here, which is an open source respirator, which has been very, very, very rapidly developed in 4 weeks by researchers and engineers. And it is important to notice that it's open source because, of course, the needs are for developed countries, but also for low-income countries. And of course, the fact that it is open source is critical. So there are many requirements. I'm not going to insist very much, but you have here on the slides the drivers, which are absolutely obvious, the sanitary pressure, which was pretty high. And of course, during the first lockdown, we had anxiety very much, and also we didn't know what to face exactly. And it is very obvious that, at least in France and in many countries, the number of patients that were in ICU was pretty high. So, and for this reason, there was a lack of equipment, and that was observed. And that, of course, we provide an answer at the national level, but also locally with that project. There was also a fear that the supply chain were overturned, and of course, this was underlined by the uncertainty regarding the evolution of the pandemic. So the ecosystem actually provide very useful tools like the 3D printing materials and process, the prototyping capacities also, the pilot for the clean room production, and of course the connection with hospital for testing and certification. And that's also important, the fact that there was also a connection with a big industrial group for a large scale production. And of course, there are still too many things to be done beyond the emergency, and we could discuss that further. But that was a good example, we believe, in terms of the resilience and flexibility of our ecosystem. I will stop there. And
thanks, Patrick.
And pass the microphone to my colleague, Sylvie.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. So next slide, please. So it is a very short and a very complementary example that we decided all together to share with you. It is about education, and it is the story of a radically new solution, a virtual campus, and with a higher purpose related to the crisis. And this higher purpose is about student psychological safety and motivation. Because after the first months of remote schooling, it was just an evidence that we had to take care of our students. It's a matter of satisfaction, at least. And if our students are not satisfied, then we cannot survive. So we had this big challenge, and we decided to very quickly to implement a radically new solution for us and for globally for the education sectors. My aim is just to share 2 learning points. The first is about changes in the way critical decisions have been made. And the second point is about the growing importance of fast experiments and execution capabilities. So to go fast and shortly, the story is that in May, last May, like most education actors, we had to face the unintended and negative side effects of digitally enabled remote schooling. Our top management team made really a bold decision with the idea of launching a virtual campus within 5 months and at scale, meaning that it was for all the 700 students, new students entering the school. So it is both about welcoming students, but also giving them sharing with them our identity, sharing ideas about what Grenoble and what our local ecosystem is. And we had also to teach them a few things about technologies and societies. So this decision has been made on our trust, on our innovation capabilities, and it has been a success, at least in terms of student satisfaction. Next slide, please. So yes, thank you. So what we wanted to share is really about this idea of experimenting a radically new solution, and our preliminary learnings about this when we have a higher purpose are twofold. And these learnings are really tightly related to the ecosystem we are ensured in. So the first learning is about 4 principles that we would tend to recommend in this kind of situation. The first one is about the topic and the alignment with local partners' expectation with their core technologies, but also their peripheral technologies. The second one is about sharing a strong ambition, and this ambition with all our stakeholders. And it was about emotional and interactive experience with our students, but also with our teachers. We've made technological choice. The question was about our ability to appropriate these technologies. We have some kind of maturities, but we had to choose also somehow mature peripheral technologies. And the other point is related to our choices. It's about our dynamic capabilities. And we are dealing really with internal capabilities, but also with external capabilities coming from all the actors of our ecosystem. Then the ecosystem effect, it means that the ecosystem appears as a success factor. And the question is about how to leverage this ecosystem effect when possible. Everything has been said, so I'll go very fast. The ecosystem is really a level of attractiveness, including external new partners, and it was the case for leaders in virtual reality and companies really willing to test and to experiment with us. It is about mutual trust as a lever of rapid new arrangements to access key and strategic resources. It is about existing collaborative structures and infrastructures that are shared at the ecosystem level for testing, for experimenting. And it's also about our track record, which probably is source of trust for many stakeholders. So thank you.
Thank you, Sylvie. So now we're going to move on to the panel. We're going to do like the last panel. We're going to invite a few people at a time to take one of our questions. So I'd like to invite Mia, Patrick, and Toshi to join us. Great. So the first and Patrick we have here in Minatech. So all of you talked quite a lot. Your ecosystems had a number of examples about how innovation ecosystems have directly responded to the pandemic. It was interesting to me that although this wasn't planned, I mean, we've managed to cover three major areas, a lot in vaccine development in Lund, Toshi talking a lot about diagnostics, and Patrick talking about ventilators, three key areas. I mean, we know that in medical innovations, at the best of times, it's very tough. And here we are in the COVID, and we're facing an even more difficult challenge in terms of speed. So, firstly, to me, I mean, Lund has a very strong involvement in the medical field. I mean, what are some of the issues that you've faced, either to try to move faster, or some of the lessons perhaps that you've learned throughout this period?
I certainly agree that even if innovation can be fast, the implementation of innovation into the healthcare system could be really, really difficult. And I think I would say that some of the best lessons we've learned this year is that we actually can move faster, that we can make decisions a little bit faster and open doors into the healthcare system. We have found new ways of them actually putting demands or requirements faster to the market. We need help with this, we need help with this, and the market can then go to demand driven innovation in a super fast way. But it still isn't implemented 100% in all of the areas, of course.
Do you think our expectation, or at least the expectation of society now, when they see these vaccines being developed in like, you know, what are we, 8 months, is the expectation of society on the medical community, the medical innovation community, is it going to get just tougher?
Yes, of course. We have to. I mean, I've written an article, I think it was 6 years ago, and the subject line was, is the world running away or winning against the, I can't really translate it, but it's about the world moving much faster than the healthcare system is, and with innovations that are super fantastic and never getting into the healthcare system, it's a real problem, and the people is expecting that to happen much faster after this crisis.
Patrick, maybe if I can go to you to pick up on that. I know Patrick, you've been in the medical field pretty much all your career. What do you have thought on that notion of speed, the expectation almost of society?
Well, I think what Mia said is pretty correct, and I just want to insist on the fact that it might depend on the type of research you're dealing with. As I mentioned, basic research was, for many reasons, largely directed towards COVID, and that was actually the key for success. I mean, when you look at the genome or the vaccine, or even some of the models for health, for public health, which were critical for lockdown and for many other issues, that actually worked pretty nicely. Which means that, and it is a message for everyone, I mean, we need basic research, and we need to still have high level of basic research. When we come to something that was also very much publicized, which is the clinical research on treatment, that was actually very different. And I must say very briefly that we had problem with that, because you can see in the newspaper that many of the studies were of very low evidence, and actually the result that we have no treatment currently. So to come back to our ecosystem, I think our ecosystem was pretty, I would say, agile and in a sense clever for many things that are actually linked to our technology can be very creative, and that's true for what I mentioned regarding respirator, or for other issues of 3D printing. And I think when you look at that, it's obvious that it's very difficult for the citizen, for the community to understand what the speed is driven by. I mean, in a sense, I mean, having vaccine in 10 months is simply unbelievable. Mm-hmm. How could you imagine that? So probably it means that we have to explain the health issues, how we are going to respond to that, and what will be the next step. And to some extent, as Mia said, the demands will be very much increased, but we have really to interact with society much more in defining the health issue and explaining how we want to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Toshi, if I could bring you in here and maybe some perspectives from Japan. I mean, you've been working a lot on the diagnostics area. What issues, lessons learned do you think you've the Japanese experience in the medical sense from this COVID episode?
Yes, and answer to your original question was originally yes. So we are suffering from some delay in the approval for the regulations. That is certainly true. But recently the situation is changing, and I raised two examples. And one example, PCR has already been commercialized, and accordingly, some approval system is accelerated, and also a lot of budget is invested towards those directions. And probably those change in our government or some regulation system is reflecting the opinion of a society, and I should say citizens or industries. So what is important is to exert the correct pressure to the government. And also in that sense, I think that the global network is also working effectively towards the right directions, I hope.
Thank you for that. I mean, thinking beyond specific innovations, I mean, have we learned, or what do you think, Patrick, we've learned as a society about our ability to respond to pandemics?
Well, I think first of all, we must say that we were not prepared at all. And that's probably the major thing to keep in mind, because we will have future pandemics for sure after COVID. So, and we probably will come back during the roundtable, but we've probably learned that it's, of course, quite difficult when you don't know what you're struggling against. I mean, the virus was largely unknown, although we know of course, other coronavirus. But what we've learned is if you actually put the priority at a very high level, then of course you can change the things, and you can, as I mentioned, actually have vaccines that are available in a very, very short period of time. What I must say also is that the priorities that were those of our ecosystem might change. I mean, we could imagine that we will have to devote more resources on health issues. And the last thing that was said by Mia, which I think is extremely important, is the fact that, of course, there is always a sort of differences and difficulties between innovation and the way the health system are organized. And I think what we faced in terms of pandemics is actually challenging our health systems, which means that we have to reinvent the place of hospital, the place of outpatient clinics, because that is absolutely needed. The fact that all the patients reach the hospital in a very disorganized way was a major problem for health issues. So we have also to deal with that. And I think technology, of course, will help. Digitalization will help. But this is a big challenge for the governments for the near future.
And just, I mean, at a European level, I mean, it seems to me there are some learnings. I mean, have we done well at a European level? We've seen a lot of responses at a national level. We've seen some responses where people are being sent to different countries to receive treatment. That's very, very positive. At the beginning, did we do well enough, do you think?
No, I think at the beginning that was pretty complex. I think that probably you probably know. I think it's very well known that the health issues are actually belonging to the member states in terms of responsibilities, which is okay. I mean, we're not going to change that anyway. But probably having a global plan and a global health program at the EU level is absolutely critical. So that will probably boost that, and you know that in the recovery plan there are many funds to do so. We'll see. And after that, the coordination between member states was pretty poor, at least at the start of the epidemics. It improved slightly during the last month, I would say, and we will have a lot to learn about that. Yes, for sure. That's.
Mia, Mia's gone. Okay, I'd like to invite Koby onto the panel if I could. Mia, maybe I'd just like to give you another European a chance to respond to that question about European coordination. How have you felt about that?
No, I think we could have done so much better, and not only European coordination, because we saw the warning signs in Asia early on, and we reacted too late and too little, and we didn't ask each other, what are you going to do? We just took our own decisions. And I think in the future, I would hope that a global, sort of test what are you trying to do and what should we do, and connect. We have had I live in the south of Sweden, and we have had totally different politics than Denmark, which is just across the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And that has affected also the business relations after that. So we could have done more, but everyone panicked, right?
Yeah, everybody. So Koby, I mean, Mia was talking there about the south of Sweden versus Denmark, and in your example, which I found fascinating, we have a real microcosm. I mean, the Technion, and you've taken this in a sense upon yourself, not only to work on the innovation, but then sort of, I mean, to deploy that. I mean, we talk about experimentation, but it's more than experimentation. I mean, you've put something really into place. I mean, the motivations are clear, but it's a very large. It seems like a large undertaking. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experiences from this?
Yes, but before I do so, I want to make one comment on the previous question about speed. This time, what we found out is that there is a big difference between the speed of innovation in engineering and in medicine. I mean, our 50 laboratories, most of our 50 laboratories were laboratories of engineering and physics or chemistry. And we came out very fast with many solutions, many great ideas. But then we found ourselves driving at full speed against the wall, which is called medical regulation. And I'm not against medical regulation, but I just want to make it clear that it slows down innovation at this time. I think medical regulation should be eased at a crisis time such as a pandemic, and this was not done. People, the regulators are too slow to react, and I'm a bit frustrated by this. Now to your question about the local world here. So we faced a problem. The problem we faced was at PAV University with dormitories, and we have a few thousand students living in the dormitories, actually many of them with families, including kindergarten, daycare centers, etc. And we were very afraid that this could be a greenhouse for the disease, we were very afraid of outbreaks. And therefore we decided to use our own technologies to prevent it, to monitor it. So we built a 4-level system. One level was putting emphasis on local responsibility, using face mask everywhere, social distance, do not eat together, do not party. This is very difficult for students to avoid partying. And the second level was a standard PCR test. We have a local station at the campus, driven by local hospital. The third level was our sewage monitoring system. We found it to be an extremely effective system. We identified every single case in the dorms within 1 day before it was actually identified by standard medical diagnosis test. We knew somebody is sick there. So this system is absolutely amazing. And finally, we have our own diagnostic kit, which I showed one slide before, one picture of it. This is a very fast, very effective kit. It can be very cheap to employ. Unfortunately, this part is still not activated. Why? Medical regulation. It took us maybe 1 month to develop it, and 5 months already we are fighting against the regulators. But overall, I think that what we are doing, we're still doing it, not finished it. It's really an experiment. It's really an experiment. What we are doing could be a prototype for how to deal with close communities. For example, senior homes, universities, boarding school, etc.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was going to say, bearing in mind this experimentation, this kind of trial that you're doing in Technion, did you have discussions with the HIFA, the wider HIFA ecosystem? Were there things that you could transfer or trial in the wider community, or is it still too early?
We are now trying to establish similar systems, not in Haifa, just outside of Haifa. There are 2 villages where the residents are people with disabilities, with special needs, and we are trying to use a system over there because an outbreak there could be catastrophic.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. So thank you to all of our panelists for that first question. I'd like to now move on. If I could invite Benoit, Olivier, and Mickael to join, and maybe if Koby and Toshi, you could disconnect. Hi, Benoit. Hi, Mickael. So, I mean, it struck me, one of the things in Sebastien's presentation, he brought up this notion about innovation ecosystems as places for experimentation. We know that there's a wealth of innovative talent in terms of engineering and development, but obviously innovation ecosystems are places that we can also experiment and try to deploy. And so you have 2 really interesting examples there from Montreal. Experimentation seems to be one of those things that can bring us perhaps closer to the community. I mean, I was interested, for example, in something that Mickael was saying about the idea that the Jalon system was providing the same advantage to convenience stores as big stores. So you can see there some interesting relationship developing with parts of your ecosystem. Can you tell us something about the feedback, the lessons you've learned from the perspective of connecting to the community?
Maybe I will start, and I will let Mickael go forward, and maybe Olivier, if you're still there, maybe connect and join us on the panel. As you said, I think that innovation, experimentation now is really part of the innovation process, and not only to validate the benefits of the innovation or the technology, but mainly to be sure that we have the social acceptance of the innovation. And I think that's why we are really focused on this real-life experimentation, to be sure that the citizen or the public will really accept the new technology and the innovation, because without social acceptance, there is no success of innovation. And maybe just before giving the speak to my colleagues, maybe also what we can see is that maybe the COVID will accelerate something very important innovation, is the mind changing of the people. Because if we just think about local buying or working from home and so on, maybe that was something that was easy to do, but that was not done before. And now with the COVID crisis, we see that maybe it's easier to have to change mind and to have people to adopt a new way of living, and that will for sure help for some technology. So maybe Olivier and Mickael, go ahead on your specific project, what we learned about social acceptance and mind changing and so on.
Yep, thank you, Benoit. on the convenience stores and the urban logistics, what was really interesting is that the innovation came from the constraint, and the constraint were double here was that we had small shops unaware of e-commerce, and on the other side, classical logistic chains which are not optimal for local-to-local deliveries. So these constraints really gave us the opportunity to be innovative and to create. And in the way we did it was really very small businesses with small delivering company with small non-profit organization making all this work. And this really grassroots ecosystem allowed us to set a production project in 2 weeks. The drawback of this is that it was really like crafting. It was not optimized. We had not the integration tools, and we really faced the fact that with 5 different logistic companies, we got 5 different IT solutions, and on the same spot with N e-com solution, we had N times 5 integration to do. So one of the real problems for this innovation in local ecosystem for me, it's the challenge of speaking the same languages, integrating solution, and someone already spoke about open source. And I really think that if we want local innovation, we need more open source, more standard languages, so that people can adapt, reconnect, decentralize, and be more resilient thanks to this.
Thanks, Mickael. Olivier, you mentioned something there about awareness of local food, of being of having this sovereignty in the food supply. I mean, do you think is this something that was already there? Has it been accentuated by the COVID, and is it going to go away again, or do you see this as a long-term kind of trend towards more localized buying and therefore projects such as Agtech?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We saw both in Quebec, Canada, and also in France, I believe, and around the world, a resurgence in terms of local acquisitions, and buying locally became really, really important to support our local businesses. And as soon as deconfinement during the summer kind of took his roots, we started seeing a drop, coming back to traditional kinds of way of or the way we used to buy food and produce. So, but now during autumn and during the reconfinement, we're seeing another spike in local markets. And the thing that's changing, at least in Canada during autumn, is that we're seeing governments really financing heavily innovation and initiatives to make sure that local markets are strong and local innovation is strong in that sector specifically. One of the things that came to light in terms of how we will strengthen our food system is the good old-fashioned Pareto, the 80-20. So we have 20% of food producers who are providing 80% of the food to the Canadian population, and we have 80% of food production who's producing about 20%. And the difference in between those two is a difference in philosophy. So we have large-scale producers which are largely committing to innovation to produce 12 months a year and to provide large-scale markets. And we have the biggest number of food producers who are more on a season-by-season approach, taking rest during the winter, living by seasonality, and we're seeing a spike in that philosophy interest. So when it comes to developing innovation for those two sectors, we have very different needs in financing from the government, and also from the innovators. How do you develop innovations to answer those two very different philosophies for food autonomy? But we're seeing both.
Thank you, Olivier. Thank you. I want to bring Sylvie in here because we're talking about experimentation. And Sylvie, the area you presented, which sort of moves us into this digital area, an area that, again, Sebastien talked about in his executive summary. So sort of addressing the needs again of your local community, of the students, looking at what technology can bring to essentially improve a situation, improving the resilience of your school.
Yeah, perhaps two things with somehow two questions inside, as you said. We do have connected to the needs of local citizens in different areas, and for us it was with our students, and with somehow the local, they are local citizens too. What we can say is that we experimented our solution with our students, because even if it was at scale, it was really an experimentation at scale. And what we can say is that there is a willingness to contribute to progress. And I think this can be just a wide observation about the whole population, this willingness to contribute to a sustainable development at each one at its local level. So I think we did connect it with citizens. However, there is I have a big question in mind, which comes from business and from management school. And there is a major issue about their satisfaction as citizens or as students who contributed to this experimentation, who contributed to value creation, who played new roles, who took risks, who spent their energy with us. What is their satisfaction, and what is the recognition they had at the end? In a previous session, it was there was a question of sharing value, and if we want this trend to go on, if we want experimentation and fast experiment out of the labs to go on, I'm sure that we have to question this issue of all stakeholders and especially citizens' satisfaction with their new roles and with their contribution. Then when we come to the digital, if we think about peripheral technologies like digital technologies, there is another issue, is that a part of the population is just excluded from access to this technology. So this is a problem, and it is well known. But also, I am sure that we are not ready to appropriate these digital technologies locally in a wise manner. There are, I would say, deep bugs behind this digital enabled world. We have experienced much more unsustainable side effects than expected. We knew that there would be negative effects, but it goes much farther than expected. And one of the problems is probably that they have these technologies, depending on who is implementing the technology, have really a major impact on behaviors, on people's behavior, but also on their cognitive abilities. We have a major problem of attention, and for our students, it's really a huge problem for learning. So I think that these effects go far beyond our control, and we have to think about it.
Thank you, Sylvie. I'd like to thank you very much, Benoit, Olivier, and Mickael. I'd like to bring back on Toshi, Koby, and Mia. So we started to get into digital, the issue of digital technologies. You've all presented various examples of digital technologies being key. Sylvie mentioned there about for certain people, perhaps the impact can be, or it's perhaps difficult in some cases. We need to look at the knock-on impact. Toshi, it was interesting in your presentation. You talked about psychological impacts. Have you noticed the three of you? Sort of, this has been a time very much where digital has taken over. Have we left people behind in this regard? Toshi, you were talking about, for example, the aging population.
Yes, and not only for the aging and not only for the digital divide, but there are common issues within the society. And I mean that we are now more and more relying on the ICT and also AI as well. But those are not the final goal, but only tools to improve our society. So we should pay attention to not only to the efficiency, but also to the psychological and also cultural issues to conceive and they develop and implement the really desirable ICT into the society. And in that sense, my statement is that life is much more important than data. And that if we can develop a very well-suited ICT and AI to the society, then that may be a very good driving force for the next innovations and also the industrial development. And that is my statement.
Mia, please respond to that.
Yes, I totally agree. But I'd like to add the security to the safety of the individuals, because when we are putting everything in the cloud and trying to make everybody physically safe, they might be digitally unsafe. So we need to also, I think the trend will be increased in how to still be open in innovation collaborations, including open data, but do that in an individually safe way. And I think that we discussed a little bit about that last year, but we haven't found the solutions for that yet. And I think that's something for the global community to really consider.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, certainly, as you say, that the issues of cloud services and security obviously predates this, but we've all suddenly become sort of IT experts and video conferencing experts, and we suddenly learn the power of these technologies, but also, as you say, some of the issues. Koby, do you have a thought on that? I know, for example, in Technion, a huge cybersecurity activity, a cybersecurity R&D activity you have there.
No comment.
We had one of your colleagues last year in Lund, actually, who gave a great presentation about.
You asked me a question on which I cannot comment, so no comment.
So we've all kind of changed. Our habits have changed. Will these changes? Again, thanks to good digital technologies, will these changes persist? I mean, we're just not going to go back to certain ways of doing things. Maybe I'll let Koby, maybe you have got a comment about this one, Koby.
Okay, I can answer this one. Some will remain forever. For example, we have been talking on online teaching for a very long time, and mostly talking. Then we had to do it. We had about 2 days to transform the entire campus to online teaching, and we did it. Now, is it good? Well, online teaching is easy. Online learning is much harder. And so we must, certainly online teaching will remain, but we must find ways to improve online learning, which is much harder. What we are doing now, for example, look at it. We're having an international conference without leaving our living room. And part of it will stay. People will fly less, at least in the next few years, people will fly less, and we'll have more such conferences online, which is much, much easier to do if it's properly run like this one. This is a good system here. And also, what I think will stay, at least I hope will stay, is the strong collaboration between scientists, engineers, and medical staff and physicians. We have seen a huge improvement in collaboration in this area, and I'm pretty sure it will stay.
Any final comments, Mia, Toshi?
Well, I believe that ICT persists in society, and so it's become much more important, and we are much more relying on that. But we must be careful about how we can adopt and how we develop the new technology. So that's my final comment.
Thank you very much, Toshi. Mia, final word.
Just something about that. I think we need to continue improve our decision making skills to more agile, more data-driven, more needs-driven, and more connected to society. And it's not easy. We just have to improve all the time.
On that word, thank you very much indeed. I would like to say, I must admit, I've sort of just scratched the surface of my questions. We could be going on for another hour, I think, talking together. It's been a lot of fun. I would also like to say this has been an exercise in collaboration together. It's very much the beginning, not the end. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to this panel to reach out to our different ecosystems, some of the things that they've heard. We find that ecosystems, they may be many tens of thousands of kilometers apart, but they have the same. They have many of the same problems. So again, very much the idea of this is to start the process of collaboration. Please do get in contact with our speakers, and we look forward to our next panel. But for the moment, thank you very much indeed. No,
of course.
That's a joke. But if I have to have a final comment, I would say that what has been said during this session is important also in terms of being in connection with the societal needs. And I think we should not forget that even the COVID was actually much more important and with more consequences in those with social economical difficulties. So that's something also the ecosystem should take into account for the future.
Sylvie,
my final comment.
You have a final comment.
So we had so many more things to say. We have to come back next year. And my final comment is the question was about winning innovation in the future, like in 20 years. My hope, perhaps, is that winning innovation, our zoo, is that will make people dreams about their contribution to sustainable development possible. Make their dream contribution come true. And the example of 3D printing, I think it's a good example because many people use 3D printing to make their dreams come true and to contribute to sustainable development. That's all.
Thank you very much. So I would like to thank, from Montreal, Benoit Balmana, Mickael Brad, Olivier Demers-Dubé, Sylvie Blanco, and Patrick Lévy here, and Mia Rolf, Toshihiko Kanayama at Tsukuba, and Koby Rubenstein in Technion. Thank you all very much.
Why is Leuven so special?
Because here, truly,
we share the hope and belief
that innovation for the better is possible.
All the elements we need are in place.
Smart minds,
creative hearts,
purpose-driven souls.
But I'm convinced that one thing makes us stand out.
We put trust in one another and we believe in each other.
And we are guided by leaders who dare to care.
We invest in mission-oriented co-creation.
Where we create new governance models.
We choose for a more radical climate transition.
We give our passion and dedication
for the health and well-being of each other.
That is what drives our innovation.
And that is what will connect us forever.
Houston Exponential is an independent nonprofit that's focused on accelerating the growth of Houston's tech ecosystem.
I really do appreciate you being at the first annual Houston Tech Rodeo.
The hope today is to help represent Houston technology companies.
Concern, not forgetting my pitch.
Fumbling my words.
Follow Jason Kalkinis and get his perspective and how he will help the founders on stage.
Trying to get as much golden nuggets as possible from him.
So, not a great answer. This is one of the things I teach in our accelerators, just have to crisply answer these. Focus is critical.
As an angel investor, I have to say that what's going on with Houston Exponential, the Houston Tech Rodeo, and all the other activities going on, this is an exciting time to be in Houston.
I'm really excited about the momentum.
HX is trying to bring all the tech investors and community together so we can become the Silicon Bayou of Texas. It's great to support HX in this effort.
One of the things that we do is we help to bring venture capitalists into Houston.
Well, we're a very active early stage investor in the Houston economy. So anything that helps the local startup community grow is something that we want to be involved in because that's where our investments come from.
The goal for me was I wanted to inspire 10,000 rich people to get off the sidelines and take the dead money they have in bonds or ETFs, real estate. For those 10,000 accredited rich investors, just chip off like 5% of their net worth, go invest in startup companies, and try to help change the world and support entrepreneurship and support more experiments that make the human species and society and our great country better.
Being a part of this means that I'm a part of the change, and we're going to be the next smart city, and I love that.
In 2019, there were 130 venture capitals firms which came to Houston as a result of Houston Exponential and Houston Exponential Venture Fund. And when they come, they want to come back.
And we have actual VCs here, Nightscape Ventures, and you guys are based out of Houston, right?
That's right.
So why did you decide Houston was the place to be?
I'm a native Houstonian. I went to school at University of Houston, so I grew up here.
What's your favorite thing about Houston?
I just love the collaborative culture. It's a really fun experience to kind of be a part of that growth in a city that you wouldn't expect it from.
I think our investments before have kind of leaned on Houston's strengths. It's a much more diverse crowd now, not only in people, but the types of startups that they're launching.
Innovation plays such a big role.
I'm supporting the Houston Tech Rodeo because I see Houston as an incredible opportunity, as the most diverse city, and so much excitement here. I was just in New York this week, and everybody was telling me about all the great things happening in Houston, which I love to hear.
If you could tell your future self, a piece of advice, what would you say to your future self?
Any opportunity that comes your way, just snatch it. There's opportunity coming left and right with Houston being a hub for technology.
The last 3 businesses that we've invested in have all been run by women. We have 2 businesses teed up right now, one of which is run by a woman and one of which is run by a minority. We're looking for the best returns for our investors. Right now, we're finding great opportunity in women and minority-run businesses.
Being able to connect to the right people at the right time to help startups and founders and entrepreneurs, because, dude, being an entrepreneur is hard.
If you're a founder, you're signing up for a 70% chance of failure, essentially a suicide mission. The good news is you don't actually die. You just hit the reset button and go again.
If you could sum up the Houston Tech Rodeo in one sentence, what would you say?
I would say it's an amazing idea to bring together our tech startup ecosystem along with partnering with corporations here.
PMG is really proud of our efforts to promote innovation and also to support the startup community.
Just excited to see how
things really seem to be accelerating in terms of the community here.
I feel like I'm part of the club.
You're part of the club.
I'm part of the club, and it's cool to see everything change and to meet new people every day.
Your favorite part of the Houston Tech Rodeo?
The event with Mass Challenge was excellent. Getting to meet a whole bunch of new entrepreneurs, startup people, VC, people who are genuinely interested in making a difference within Houston.
Houston is an under-leveraged opportunity for investment, and we got to hear that direct from some of the veterans, from Blair Group, from Mercury Fund, from Goose Society, and Artemis Fund. But what we've noticed is that there's this groundswell of activity and everyone's starting to pay attention.
I'm supporting the Tech Rodeo because Houston, it's where I started my first company, and it's now where I empower other founders. We're the Moonshot City.
I didn't realize Houston was such an innovative city, but now I'm really excited about our future.
Because when you support innovators, ideators, big things can happen.
To talk about where you are today, you got to figure out like where we were just a couple years ago, which for like context, which was virtually nowhere, right? A couple hundred startups, no real startup development organizations, less than 200 million in venture capital coming into the ecosystem. When we started looking at the development of the ecosystem a few years ago, the thing that you can't measure was trying to figure out like how much do people really care about this, right? How much do they show up? How much do they get engaged? And how do you create like a culture of innovation? And now you come out to events like this, and they're coming out now, right? They're showing up, they're being active. The corporates are being active. They're investing their time, their energy, their resources into this ecosystem, that was the paradigm shift that we needed to see. And that's really happened just in the last, I'd say, 12 to 18 months.
Our challenge was to bring connection between scientists and city, because there are so many research institutions in Tsukuba, but they don't really have a chance to communicate with the city hall, where our policy was not really based on evidence or scientific background. So our challenge now is to connect these two issues into one solution as a city policy. of especially younger people in the elections is severely low in Japan and in Tsukuba City as well. And we are hoping that by using this blockchain internet voting system, people can easily vote and turnout will be rising. And that's kind of a basis of new type of democracy, I believe. It is very simple. It's to contribute to humankind by improving people's lives through science and technology.
Science parks and areas of innovation are major science, technology, and innovation infrastructures that drive the country's economy. Science parks and areas of innovation in Thailand have been integrated as a network to facilitate research into innovation-based investment systematically. Science parks and areas of innovation are Software Park Thailand. Its roles are to promote and support Thai software entrepreneurs to grow strongly and develop automation, robotics, and intelligent electronics industries of the country. Thailand Science Park, an industry-oriented research community with one of the best innovative ecosystems in the country, comprises of leading universities and research centers, specialized in biotechnology, digital, advanced materials, and nanotechnology. In addition, almost 100 companies have their R&D laboratories here, conducting research on their own, as well as collaborating with others to speed up innovation and create higher return on investment. Regional Science Park comprises of the Northern, Northeastern, and Southern Science Parks. They are the regional infrastructures focusing on improving technological capabilities of the private sector in local areas and promoting investment in R&D to facilitate the development of local entrepreneurs, thereby connecting and supporting regional economy development. Foodinopolis, the hub connecting world-leading food companies. Thai food companies in all sizes, including startups, which are supply chain, to be in the same place with research institutes and leading universities, allowing easy access to several supporting units in order to produce high value-added food products that have high demand globally, such as healthy food and functional food, foodceuticals, food additives, and nutri-extracts. At the Eastern Economic Corridor of Innovation, or EECI, research outcomes and innovations developed within science parks and areas of innovation can be further expanded to prototype production line for field test. EECI is the Center for National Research, which translates research developed in science parks and universities in Thailand into innovation and transferring high-level technology from abroad to drive Thailand's innovation-induced industries. EECI has 6 focus industries, which are modern agriculture, biochemicals, high-performance battery and modern transports, automation, robotics, and intelligent electronics, aviation and space, medical devices, EECI has developed a regulatory sandbox to serve as a testing ground for related innovations and also modernized rules and regulations. It is obvious that science parks and areas of innovation promote private sector capabilities in research development and innovation. The private sector can establish its own R&D lab to develop innovation and obtain maximum benefit from Thailand Board of Investment, and also connect with government labs or other private laboratories, and can reach many scientists, researchers, and innovators, including easy access to innovation development and technological business services and support. Science parks and areas of innovation have systematically integrated collaboration to support research and create innovation for the private sector, as well as to create industrial capability on the world stage, and drive Thailand 4.0 for stability, prosperity, and sustainability. Science parks and areas of innovation, connecting research and investment across Thailand.
The Commission worked with the federal government, the state government and local councils to co-create the ANSTO Collaboration Area Place strategy. This strategy's 2036 vision for ANSTO sees an innovation precinct at its Lucas Heights campus that would co-locate knowledge-intensive businesses, high-tech industries, STEM graduates from Australian universities and other scientific partners. ANSTO's unrivaled research infrastructure uniquely positions the organisation to support startups, industry, research and other precincts, placing it at the heart of Australia's innovation capabilities. ANSTO is located close to health and education precincts at Liverpool, Bankstown, and it sits within a landscape shaped by Heathcote National Park, the Royal National Park, Warranora River, with a rich Aboriginal cultural history. The place strategy proposes actions which make the vision a reality.
We're standing in front of the Opal reactor, part of the ANSTO Innovation Precinct. We are hoping to attract an innovative and vibrant community of researchers, startups and industries that can work together to create lots of value in the southern Sydney area. The collaboration area is really important. State and local government actors coming together to bring together a community who can create value in this area. These are the collaborations that make a difference and we're excited to be part of that.
Every day, 2/3 of our local residents leave the Southern Shire to get to work. This is because there's not enough local jobs to suit their skills. This also places added pressure on roads and public transport. ANSTO's Innovation Precinct will harness world-leading research and infrastructure to create a broad range of skilled jobs, helping our local employment and economic activity in and beyond the Southern Shire. And that's why the Innovation Precinct is a key feature in Council's economic development strategy.
The co-creative place strategy supports ANSTO's vision for the Innovation Precinct. The strategy includes priorities and actions for going forward and provides a framework for ongoing collaborative governance. This long-term collaborative approach will help ANSTO reach its full potential as an economic catalyst for the South District.
Grenoble Alpes, pionnier de l'industrie.
Grenoble Alpes, pionnier de l'énergie. Grenoble Alpes, pionnier de l'électronique.
Grenoble Alpes, pionnier de la mobilité.
Grenoble Alpes, pionnier des technologies médicales.
Grenoble Alpes, pionnier de l'industrie du sport. Grenoble Alpes, pionnier de l'informatique et du digital.